Okay, assalamu alaikum, guys. Jazakallah for joining us here in Marquee. So we're here with some very special guests in honor of Syed Taalay Ahmed Sahib Shaheed, who, as most of you will know, on the 23rd of August, his life was taken while he was on an assignment in Africa. He was there for a Jamaati assignment and passed away in an attack. Hazur spoke tremendously about him in a Friday sermon on the 3rd of September and talked about, mentioned him, used very affectionate words and very affectionate language about Taalay Sahib. He used words like he was a hira, he was a diamond. He said that he was pure in his affection for Khilafat and for Allah Ta'ala, referring to him as Pyare Taalay, translating to beloved Taalay. Hazur expressed how this simple devotee showed his affection in every act he did for his love of Khilafat and Allah Ta'ala. While he did not openly express his love to Hazur, to our beloved Khalifa, but Hazur said his actions alone were a sentiment to the purity and affection he had for the institution of Khilafat and for the promised Messiah's Jamaat. Today we will share some of the unique qualities and characteristics of beloved Syed Taalay Ahmed Sahib, how he lived and breathed a simple and humble life that was for serving purely the Jamaat of the promised Messiah. With us today we've got Syed Munawar Adil Ahmed Sahib, who is the brother of Taalay Ahmed Sahib. We've got Taalay Ahmed Sahib's father. We have got Amir Safir Sahib, who was a working colleague within the press and media office. And we've got Wadood Sahib, who was the Qaid in Hartlepool when Taalay Ahmed Sahib was living in Hartlepool. And we will hear different aspects and recollections of his life and his personality, and you will get to learn about how most of you may not have met him. Some of you may have had the opportunity to meet him and talk to him, but he was not someone who openly, you would not see him around, or you might see him doing simple work. So we are going to learn many different aspects of his life and how he grew up from the humble place in Hartlepool and started serving the Jamaat from a very early age. I'd like to turn to our panelists and start with the personality and character of Syed Taalay Ahmed Sahib. And I will ask his brother to start, and just to share with us some of the unique qualities and characteristics that you experienced growing up with Taalay Ahmed Sahib as his brother, as his friend, and just in your childhood and as you were growing up.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm going to focus predominantly on my time growing up with Taalay in Hartlepool because we've got a really good panel here today who can discuss a lot about his character at different times of his life. And I think what I can relate to the best is our time growing up from young children to late teens until Taalay went to university. So a little something about his personality and character that I took note of early on was that he was a leader. This is something I always really looked up to him for, that people really respected him as a leader. He was captain of the cricket team at school, the football team. We played at Hartlepool Cricket Club, and he was the captain there. And he was really well respected from a range of different people. And I always found this to be quite unique because Hartlepool, especially when you're growing up, it's a predominantly white working class town, and we did experience some racism growing up. So the fact that people held him in such high regard, and I'm talking about local people, I think showed his character and how he's so charismatic, and people really valued that and saw that, regardless of the fact that we were Pakistani or we were Muslim. They could see that Taalay had characteristics about him that nobody else did. So couple of stories I can mention from growing up with him was that one time we were at the cricket club and they were playing just a casual game of football, kicking a ball about. And there was a mixture of ages there. I think Taalay was probably only about 13, 14, and a few of his friends were there. And during that game of football, there was a lot of coaches around adults. One of Taalay's friends unfortunately broke his leg during the game, and nobody went over to him. I think people were saying that he was being a bit of a prima donna, diving, taking his opportunity to get some attention. But Taalay knew this person, his friend Richard, his name was, and he went over to him straight away. Again, Taalay was only 13 or 14, and he was the one to initially administer some basic first aid, to call the ambulance and wait with him until the paramedics arrived. Now, I didn't know this story, I wasn't there at the time, but what happened is Richard wrote a card and sent it to the masjid on hearing the news of Taalay, and told us this story and said he was always my captain. I always really respected him, and ever since the day I went and that unfortunate incident happened, he really looked after me. And even though there was much older people there than him, and there was coaches and adults, he was the one who came and took charge and was the one who looked after him, made sure he got the care he needed at the time, and kept him calm, because of course if you've ever broken a bone like that, you do go into shock. But Taalay was the one to reassure him and ease his nerves at the time. Something else about his character was that he was incredibly intelligent, in fact, and it's something he didn't brag about in any way. But if you spent enough time with him, you realize that this guy he's really switched on. One time I was snooping around his room when he wasn't in. As a younger brother, of course, that's what you do in your free time. And I came across his workbooks from school, so I started to look through them, see what he was doing in school. And I found a scrapbook. It was about this size, about A5, sorry, and he had sketches over it, so it took my interest. He'd drawn some pictures on the front, and then I opened it and I found the book was filled with poetry. Now, I'm not sure if all of you have read his poem about Khilafat, but if you have, then you've seen he was very skilled in that, and his intelligence and passion for that came across within his poem about Huzur. But within this book, at the time, I thought it was quite strange that a teenage boy was writing poetry. I thought, this is a bit feminine, this is a bit girly. I've got ammunition now to use against him later on. When I started to read it, when I started to read it, I read it from back to front, because there were poems which were making me laugh with hysterics, and then there was poetry that was making me extremely emotional and even crying. I was only maybe 10 or 11 at the time, but straight away it kind of it made me think that there's a certain perception that some people have about poetry and men writing poetry, that it's not that masculine. But straight away, my perception's completely changed, and I thought, actually it's okay for guys to write poetry, and he was my role model in that and showed me that it's okay to be like this. The unfortunate thing was because I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing, I could never actually tell him that I read it and that I really enjoyed reading his work. Something that I wish I had, but because I was in his room when I shouldn't have been, I thought I'll just have to keep this secret to myself. So these are just a couple of things that I learned from him growing up. I try to model myself on him the best I could. I felt like at times, I was his shadow. I just follow him everywhere and try and be like him. And, his shadow was a great place to be, because he not only protected me when I needed protecting, and looked after me like an older brother does, but taught me, with kindness and love, the life skills that I needed to know and to go through life with.
You mentioned that growing up in Hartlepool, there was it's a mixed town, predominantly kind of white English people. How did Taalay Sahib portray himself as a Muslim, and how did he maintain his Muslim his standards, mixing within different cultures and different people?
So he was incredibly proud of his heritage. He made it very clear. Now, in that environment, it's easy to become quite insular and try and mix in with everybody else and lose some of your own cultural upbringing. But Taalay was never like that. In fact, he went to the other side of the spectrum and almost made a bigger deal out of it to his friends, especially that, I'm Pakistani, I'm a Muslim, and I'm proud of it. One of the stories that I told in the documentary, and I'll tell it again in case someone hasn't heard it, is that when he ran for head boy at our secondary school, I was lucky enough to be in year 7 at the time. So, and it was like a popularity vote essentially, that everyone had a vote, whoever got the most votes won. And there was some really interesting speeches that year, but Taalay's was by far the most unique, funny, interesting. But what he did to show that he was proud of who he was and where he was from is that he came in a shalwar kameez to do his speech, and he did this rap, and it really, it got through. But it wasn't just rhyming simple words together. It was done with such intelligence that everyone from year 7 to 11 and the teachers who voted as well were taken by it. So to do that, to make it appealing to not only younger students but also the older students and adults, was only now do I see that how he had that voice and that appeal to people. But anyway, he went on to win it and became the head boy. He then went to college and also became the head boy there through a similar system. And I think people just overlook the fact that he was Pakistani or he's Muslim, because he had such charisma about him, such charm. He was so polite. He had a really great sense of humor, and he was proud of who he was, but he never made it absolute. He didn't make a huge deal out of it. He was very subtle about it, but he wanted people to know that I'm confident in who I am, and you should respect me for who I am as well. And people did.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate and to meet Taalay Sahib as well, and I think that came across for me as well, that he was very confident, but yet there was no arrogance there, But he stood his ground, and he, like you said, he was proud of who he was and what he stood for. I'd like to ask Taalay Sahib's father, when he was a child, you must have seen unique things in him that made him stand out. How did you nurture him as a child because there's many people who have young children here who are going to think about how do we raise children. So what did you do with your children and specifically with Taalay Sahib when you were raising them as young children?
Jazakallah. Before I say anything about that, if you allow me, Hamid, Taalay's youngest brother, he wants to say something, I think.
Bilkul, of course. Do you want to take your mask off?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Taalay was a very kind and loving brother. When I went to London before we moved, well, it was Jalsa time, and he didn't have a lot of rooms, so I slept in the living room with him and his son. So I fell asleep on the floor, and I woke up in the morning to find I was on the couch, and my mother asked him, why is Hamid on the couch instead of on the floor? And he said he wanted the best for his guests. And then I think in 2018 there was a Lajna Ijtema, and I'd come with my sister and my mother to the Ijtema, and me and my sister weren't allowed in since we weren't Lajna, so we went to Dad was there working for MTA Battle for Two, and he came to me and Nurasar and took us down the street for ice cream, and that just shows he was very kind to each other, and very generous.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I've spoken about this subject in an interview with Voice of Islam, so people who have heard it, the answer is exactly the same. I don't feel that we had to do anything with Taalay as far as nurturing is concerned. The circumstances were made for him to be what he became. And first of all, there is a definition about shahada. Shahada means bearing witness to the being of God. So shahadat is something where by your actions you become an embodiment of a witness who bears that there is a God. Like you have seen something. Say if you have been to North Pole, and some of you and most of the people haven't been. So if somebody has been to the North Pole and come back, his statement will be taken very seriously, because they'll say that I've been there, I've seen it. And shahadat is exactly like that. You are put in front of God, you know that He exists, and then you tell people that I bear witness that He exists. Now, if some of you want to be shaheed and are afraid of dying, don't worry about it, because you don't have to lay down your life to be a shaheed. With your actions and with your deeds and the way you spend your life, you can be a shaheed. You can be that person who bears witness to the existence of God. So as far as Taalay is concerned, I strongly believe that God chose him before his birth to be a witness to his existence. So before he was conceived, before he was born, God chose him to be a shaheed. Now, as far as his parents are concerned, this is our honor and our saadat that he chose us to be his parents. And why I say so, I'll just give you an example. That now everyone is calling him a diamond of Khilafat. Hazur, when came to know of his demise, it was 24th, you said 23rd, but he passed away on 24th at about 2 a.m. in the morning, our time. And Hazur was informed, and immediately Hazur texted, sent a message to Abid Saab, and in that message he referred to him as Diamond. Now it's not coincidental, because when I sent my proposal of marriage to Taalay's mother, Taalay mothers, like every other pious lady or pious girl or righteous person, did dua and istikhara. And in that istikhara, she saw that I am walking along with her, and the path is very difficult, and it's covered with snow. And what she says is that she becomes very sad because I leave her to go ahead to meet some other people, and she's left on her own in that difficult path. Then what she does is she sees a hut, and she goes inside that, which is warm, which is very nice, and there's a person towards she feels a great standard of trust, as if this person is very trustworthy. He is a Pakistani dressed in a cap of elderly age. And what he does for her is that he takes out a bag and lays the contents on the bed. And she, after seeing those contents are gems and rubies and stuff like that, and she's thinking to herself, this must be the richest person in this world. And as she's thinking that, she says that you enter that hut as if you come back for me, and you take out a large rock-sized diamond and throw it on top of those gems, as if to say that I am also the richest person of this earth. So that diamond was ordained to be born to us before we were married. Now next, what comes is his nurturing part, because when God chooses a soul to bear witness to his existence, then he makes all the plans for him. So as I say, that I'm honored, me and my wife both, that he chose us to be his parents. But then he chose all. We did not do anything. In fact, everything was done for us. I myself was not a very religious person. My wife always was. But the things started happening where I had to become religious. For instance, I have a beard now, and I have had this beard for almost 32 years now. And how it happened was, as soon as Taalay was born, and he was only few months old, there came the first Ramadan. And during that Ramadan, it never happened to me before, and it never happened after. I grew certain bristles on my face, which prevented me to shave. I could not shave. And it remained there throughout Ramadan. So I had to grow a beard. And when I had grown a beard, those pimples and everything, they went away after Ramadan. But I decided, let me just keep this beard. So since then I've kept the beard. But I'm just giving you this example because it's an apparent example. It's an apparent example which you can see and which you can relate to. But it started happening in my life that I started becoming religious. Although I had that seed in me which wanted and yearned for God, but it was just a seed which had life inside. And what Taalay did, the existence of Taalay when he came to us was he became the water, soil, and light for it. And that seed sprouted and started getting bigger and bigger. So don't ask me what I did for Taalay, ask me what Taalay did for me. And this is what Taalay had as far as the spiritual effect of that is concerned. And then coming to his tarbiyat and rest of the systems, when I can be here with you, all night, and I can give you examples, but it'll be too late. In a nutshell, what started happening was that God started making plans for him, and we just went along with the plan. So he got the best tarbiyat there could be for any person who was being trained to be that witness. So his ultimate shahadat, giving up his life, is just icing on the cake. All his life, every moment of it that he passed was a testament to the fact of the existence of God. what he started, what he loved, and what he yearned for is God. And that source then guided him to love all the people and all the creatures that God loved. And in that comes top of the list is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and promised Messiah alayhi salam. So he wanted to be in those times where these prophets existed, and he could be part of those times. So I could feel that his spirits would wander in the streets of Medina and Makkah 1400 years ago. And just with the mention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his eyes would fill up and his lips would start trembling. And this was in very young age. So I could see and I could feel that he yearns to be during that time. And he also understands that he has been made to exist and be born in this time. So what is the closest person in embodiment to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And it is the Khilafat. So he made that connection, and he understood that, so that his spirit was wandering 1400 years ago, while his body laid at the threshold of Khilafat, every bit and every piece of it. So we did not made any provision or any tarbiyat for us. It was all done by Allah. And in doing so, he, made tarbiyat for me. He educated me and trained me, perhaps. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah for sharing that. That was, I think many of us who are parents and who are new parents sometimes get worried with the thought of parenthood. But I think one of the examples you gave, that Allah Ta'ala sometimes creates the circumstances and the conditions for what He wishes. And like you said, some of it was already ordained what the life of Taalay Sahib was going to be. So we are almost become a support system for Allah Ta'ala's wishes. I'd like to talk more about his personality. And Wadood Sahib was Qaid at the time in Hartlepool when Taalay Sahib was growing up. So Wadood Sahib, as a young tifl in Hartlepool, in a somewhat diverse town, what was your experience of Taalay Sahib, and how did he participate? How did he get involved? What was special? What did you see special about him?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I'll start by saying this, that I feel honored to be able to say that I'm someone who knew him and met him and learned from his life in extraordinary way, many, many times. And if you had met Taalay from a very young age, he was just like an ordinary khadim. One of you sat here, he will look exactly like him. But what was extraordinary about him was that love of God Almighty, that love of Holy Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the love of Promised Messiah, Wasallam, and Khulafa. And he tried to copy whatever he could from a very young age. For example, he was very, very honest. Even when he made a mistake, he would own up to it, and he would say, it was me, or I did it, or I didn't do it. I remember when I was Qaid, he would always bring his reports in such a detail that it would be a few pages. I was just showing Adil one just before they started. And when he was Nazim Syed Jismani, he started Hamid Khan table tennis tournament in Hartlepool. And the report he would write on the back of the matches or the actual stages of these tournament was like as if you were reading a match of the day report. In such a detail with who lost how many points, what happened. You could actually read the report and see yourself going back to the match itself. And if you look at watch his documentaries, he applied that same principle in those documentaries as well. So he was self-learning. I don't think I ever had to stop him from doing something. I also never had to encourage him to take his job seriously. He would pay chanda, and one thing I remember, he would bring chanda in very small piece coins, 10 pence coins and 5 pence coins, and I used to say to him, at least give me pound coins. And he was like, well, I'm collecting these, so I'm going to bring these. So he would pay his own khudam chanda, and he was always the first one to bring it to, and he was a student. I think one other thing I would like to mention is that, Taalay Saab's life shows that on the face of it, if you want to attain piety and righteousness, it's never going to be attained through worldly means. He was never proud of his worldly achievements, ever. He was never, walking around with arrogance in himself. One of the most intelligent people I've ever met, but will never make you feel any less than him when he's speaking to you. Will go down to your level and speak to you in the same tone and the same way that he would speak to anybody else. So a very, very kind soul, and very humorous as well. He would, every now and then he will say something which will, make you feel elated in happiness. And that was his personality, and he would be talking about something very seriously, but he will say it in such a way that it would actually hit the point and not actually upset anyone. When I came to Hartlepool, I was around 17, 18-year-old, and Taalay would have been around 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old. To Taalay Saab's house because the Namaz center used to be there, and it was the Salat center at the time. And for meetings or Jummah prayers or anything, and we would sit around and talk, or we would go in the back garden and play cricket. And that connection was built from there. And I think as a Qaid, only thing I'd say is that if every khadim that I had was like Taalay, then I would have been the luckiest Qaid. And to feel that love and the affection that I got from him was humbling. And it lasted up until the day, I met him just at Jalsa as well. And you can tell when someone close to you meets you, and that conversation and how it takes place is a different, feeling. And I can't even describe that to you. So, Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Taalay Saab continued in his Jamaat work. He worked with Amir Safir Sahib in the press and media and press office. Amir Sahib, could you share when it came to work, when it came to just his normal everyday activities, what did you see in Taalay Saab's attitude that shows that he was devoted to the Jamaat and how passionate he was about the institution of Khilafat?
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I'd like to say I'm honored but slightly embarrassed as well. We have, of course, very capable and esteemed people here on this panel, including Taalay Saab's own family. So I feel unworthy to be saying a few things. However, since I've been asked, I will make a small attempt. A slight correction, with myself, he worked in the Review of Religions, and it was afterwards, straight after, that he joined the press department. So Taalay Saab, Hazur mentioned it, I believe, in the khutbah as well, that when he came to London, I believe he was staying in 39, and it was during that time that he started working for the Review of Religions. And one of the major projects, it might have been one of his first major Jamaat projects in the center anyways, with Hazur's guidance and approval, he was assigned to go through 100 years of the Review of Religions archives, index, tag, and categorize them. This was a massive task. This was no small task. For those of you who don't know, the promised Messiah ﷺ himself started the Review of Religions. For many, many years, with his own hands, the promised Messiah would write for the Review of Religions in Urdu. there was a review of religions Urdu, and it would be translated into English. Then you had some very great personalities of the Jamaat, like Hadrat Mirza Bashir Ahmed, from whose lineage Taalay was himself. Hadrat Maulvi Sher Ali Sahab, many of you read the translation of the Quran, was the editor of Review. Hadrat Malik Ghulam Farid Sahab, who wrote a short commentary, and so on and so forth. The point is to go through 100 years of such peerless material, to understand it, and then to decide how to categorize it for the rest of the Jamaat. Even now, if you go on the Review of Religions website and put topics, this is a Sadqa Jariyah of Taalay. So at the time, Taalay was on his own. And that's one first quality I would like to mention, is that Taalay was so passionate to serve Khilafat and the Jamaat. I didn't have to tell him a single thing. I did not have to explain to him how to do anything. He was so zealous that he himself would come up with the idea. He himself would go and create a team, and he created a team of 11 people. He himself would go through the archives of this incredible material, scholarly material, and give me the suggestion about this is how we should categorize it. And then he would come back after a little while and say, I'm not satisfied, let's just revise it and do it like this. So anyhow, this was a massive project that Taalay did. And one thing that's interesting is that when he was doing this project, at the time he was studying biomedical science. And I still remember at the time, Hazur directed to him, and Hazur mentioned to me as well, because he was thinking what to do further after this. His line was something completely different. Perhaps he would go into research or medicine. And Hazur instructed him to do a master's in journalism for his Waqf. He was Waqf-e-No. I remember Taalay, even till the end, used to look back at that and say to me, he used to often call me after his documentaries and say that was one of my life-changing moments. And I remember Hazur mentioned this to me before his khutbah. We were discussing Taalay and I was giving my condolences. That see how Taalay started doing research and writing articles. His line was something completely different. And through the blessings of Waqf, through his own hard work, through Hazur's guidance, his line changed to something completely different, journalism. And now we see, and Hazur's mentioned it in his khutbahs, the legacy he's left in MTA. He went to press first, straight after, but then MTA, this week with Hazur and the documentaries he's made. But that's an incredible transformation, and that's a testament to Taalay having full belief in whatever Hazur said and Hazur's words. So as I mentioned, he never had to be pushed, he never had to be reminded. He always had this incredible passion to just serve. His love for Khilafat was such that often I had to, Taalay of course was related to Hazur, we all know now, and in the exhibition it mentions his lineage. What's amazing for me, and it links to his humility, that even in MTA where he was working, at the time of his funeral, many people were not aware that he was from the Promised Messiah's family. He never boasted about this. Yet despite having this personal connection of blood, whenever I conveyed anything to him of Hazur's, his eyes would light up like someone was being offered candy. I would sometimes be surprised. I've very rarely seen anyone like this. And I would be taken aback. How he would, even just before he went to Africa, he came to meet me. And we were sitting together discussing something, and I just happened to mention in passing something about Hazur. And I was going on to the rest of the conversation, and he said no. He made me discuss the whole thing for 5-10 minutes. He wanted to hear everything. And there's very few people that I've seen like that who give so much regard. As Hazur said, that very few people understand the status of Khilafat. One thing I would like to say is that one thing I've been reflecting on with Taalay is that this people in the world who achieve great things like him, they have this switch which they can't turn off. And it doesn't just, we all know, as you know, this week with Hazur, the documentary he's made, this indexing project in Review, which is a massive legacy, and the drive that he had. Like Hazur mentioned in the khutbah, he saw it as a challenge. But I saw this in every aspect of life. That was very unique for me, and I want to give you a short example. So in the Jamaat work, we know that he had this great drive. But even something as small as a friendly football match, I saw that he couldn't turn this switch off of ultimate passion. So after he left from Review of Religions to MTA, we maintained a very close personal relationship. And we used to play football together often and go out and eat and play football. So we arranged a match between MTA and Review of Religions, just for joke, just for as banter. And in that first match, Taalay, of course, was on the other team, the captain, and I might have been the captain on this team, and we beat them 4-1. The next day, outside in Morden, outside of KFC, I was with the Review boys, and Taalay happened to be across the road. And the Review boys, being the lads that they are, started giving him banter and across the street shouting that Taalay 4-1, 4-1. And you know, they were singing to him and chanting to him. But Taalay took it not to heart, but he took it very seriously. He was quiet, and he just went quietly away, and he didn't say a word, didn't react. The next day, a cousin of mine who works in MTA News with Taalay, he messaged me and said, what have you done? And he said, Taalay, he gathered together the boys in MTA, and he gave a rousing speech, and he developed strategies and tactics for many days. And he said, look, they beat us. We can't. The rest of the boys went back to their work. You know, it was just a friendly, meaningless match. But like I said, he had this switch he couldn't turn off of greatness, of achieving, never wanting to be second best. And so he did those tactics, strategy, and he messaged me, Amir, the game on, let's go back. So the match came, and on the pitch, I don't know if Adil might have been playing as well for that match. I can't remember if you played in that. But anyhow, on the pitch, he was like playing like Champions League final. He was running around giving orders and instructions, and he took it so seriously, and they beat us 8-2. They destroyed us. I think Muzammil, who was running the hub, might remember this. I think he was there. And anyhow, the point is that, as I said, Taalay had this. It was in every aspect of life. It wasn't just that he was doing great things like this week with Hazur, which he was. In every aspect of life, even something like a meaningless football match, he had this thing where he had to always achieve the best. One thing is also that I wanted to mention is that his love for the promised Messiah and the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which Hazur mentioned, and a missionary here who's sitting here right now, who was one of the first missionaries to join Review, mentioned this to me. So in the early days, Taalay used to come, and there was just a few people, and Murtaza Saab is right here. It's just two or three of us. Now you might see Review of Religions as a huge team, but we were just a few people, and Taalay used to come daily, and we used to talk. So the missionary here mentioned another Ahmadi who was struggling with some allegations that were made against the Jamaat, common allegations against the promised Messiah and against the Jamaat. So what happened after that is that they were just discussing it, and Taalay was so passionate, he was so particular about responding to the allegations that he said to him that, look, he had such an honor for the respect of the Jamaat. He said, look, I want to know all these allegations right now, and I want to, research them. So overnight, he went and he researched into all these 5, 6, 7 allegations. And actually, I was just sent this now, a 16-page document, where he said, I'm not worried about publishing it. In fact, he said to the missionary, publish it in your name. I just want the blessings of Allah. But the point is, he went overnight and he researched this. He wrote 16 pages, and he got all the allegations and responded to them. And he didn't even care about whether it would be in his name. All he cared about was the honor of responding to the allegations of the Jamaat. In fact, we were going through our archives and we found many articles of his we still haven't published. There's one on the Prophet Adam and many other things that we may, if Hazur approves, publish that we didn't realize. And again, testament to his knowledge. One interesting thing I would like to mention is that when Taalay was in charge of the indexing department, his respected mother, was actually the deputy of that department. So Taalay was technically the in charge, and his mother was the deputy. What I saw in that time was really interesting, because you may think that it could be awkward, that how can he be the boss of his mother? But what I saw a glimpse of, and Taalay's family will be able to tell far better than me, I realized in that time, speaking to both of them, that Taalay was actually best friends with his mother. I saw this relationship where he was so close to his mother as friends, just like you would speak to your friend if you're sitting with you. He'd be able to sit and joke and smile and talk like this. So it wasn't a relationship of head of department and deputy. It was actually a relationship of friends. And I saw that hadith, which is that heaven lies at the feet of your mother, and how Taalay, he had so much respect for his mother. At the same time, I saw that he was a best friend with his mother. And I got a glimpse of this in his time with us in the Review of Religions. One last thing I'll mention is that, as has been mentioned before, Taalay didn't care about the world. So even the clothes he wore, they were of course neat, but they were very simple. you may misunderstand him to be someone who's on the surface as someone who may not be as knowledgeable. The way he joked and talked, his whole attitude wasn't to please any people. And that's why Hazur even mentioned, and I've experienced this, Hazur mentioned this in the khutbah, I think with relation to his wife said this, that some people misunderstood this to be a little bit of arrogance, the way he talked. And I experienced this in the beginning, that people misunderstood it. But I realized afterwards that he wasn't trying to please people. He was only trying to please Allah and others. And it reminds me of something Hazur said in the khutbah in relation to Hadrat Khalifa Masih I. When Hazur was giving a series about the companions of the Promised Messiah, Hazur once said that there were some people meeting the Promised Messiah and they were kissing the Promised Messiah's hand and all running around him and showing how much possibly they love Promised Messiah through that. And Khalifa Masih I was just standing quietly by the side observing this. And Hazur said in the khutbah that Khalifa Masih Awwal, after the Promised Messiah left, he said to these people, all he said to them is, ikhlas ki zurut hai, ikhlas, meaning sincerity that is needed. So, of course, whenever we meet Hazur, we have to show the utmost respect. But if we display just outward emotions and afterwards we don't go home and say our 5 daily prayers properly or treat our mother properly or do all the things that are required, then that's not the true thing which Khalifa Masih Awwal was adhering to. With Taalay, I saw that he lived up to what Khalifa Masih Awwal was saying and Khalifa Masih Khamis is expecting. That his focus was not to please people. His focus was not to just make others, people happy per se, but his thing was to please Allah and Hazur. And without actually directly saying it to Hazur, Hazur recognized that as well, as we all heard in the khutbah and from Taalay's poem. These were just a few things. There's many other things to say, but I hope I shared just a few of these things.
Jazakallah Amir Sahib. I think we're all feeling very warmed up with some of the stories and the accounts we're hearing. Just before we carry on, guys, it might come across as ironic because I'm not wearing a mask at the moment, but some of us here are actually sitting at a distance. The people sitting in the crowd, guys, if I can request, should be wearing your mask because you have other people within close proximity of you. So anybody sitting in the crowd, please, the request is to have your masks on. We will give opportunity for people to ask questions to our panels as well. So if there is anybody who has any immediate questions that they have on mind or that they think they would like to ask, can I just get a kind of rough show of hands? Is there anybody or who are there people who would like to ask questions? Just to get an idea of how many people have questions already or may want to ask questions. Can you just raise your hands if you have a question to ask? We've got a couple. Okay. Let's have a couple of questions and then we'll come on to more about different aspects of Taalay Sab's life. So I'll let. Do you want to start by asking?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Just want to ask what made him start this program this week with Hazur, which has become really very popular.
This week with Hazur, what inspired him to start that?
Okay, yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Assalamu alaikum. So my understanding for Taalay's motivation to create this week with Hazur was that you can add in this, is that he was obviously working in MTA and having other Jamaat responsibilities. He did get to have meetings with Hazur from time to time. He got to work with Hazur, and he had such love for Khilafat. He felt that he gets to see this this side to Hazur that others don't. So I think that was his initial thought, that if I get to see it, I want everyone to be able to see it as well. I think Abid Khan Saab, who writes the diaries of Hazur, kind of planted that seed because he opened the door to Hazur's wider life and work schedule. And the feedback from that was so amazing that I think that inspired Taalay a lot. And because he was, his specialism was working behind the camera, he said, well, I'd like to do something similar to what Abid Khan Saab is doing. but with the camera, and allow people around the world to see what Huzur does on a week-to-week basis, because Taalay saw very quickly that Huzur's workload and schedule is incredibly intense, but he manages it so well, and has such a huge impact through his work, and people should see that and be motivated by it as well, and that they should try and copy Huzur in this way. So that's my thoughts on why Taalay wanted to do it.
I think I see Mubahil Shakir up there and maybe Noshirwan Rashid. They work with Taalay and they might be able to give a few words on about this week with Huzur, if it's allowed.
Noshirwan Sab, do you want to, or Mubahil Sab, do you want to just share a few comments just about how the project of this week with Huzur started and where Taalay Sab got the inspiration from?
Assalamu alaikum. So I think this idea first came from, I think initially I do Jamaat News. So there was one time when there were some events of Huzur happening and we made a report about it. And Taalay suggested that why don't you include this in Jamaat News? So at that time, I think I did include it in Jamaat News. It was just a short report. And from that, I think that was the initial stages of how this kind of started. But I think he had the idea before, like Amir Sahib mentioned, from his Abid Saab's diaries.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's how.
All right. Jazakallah.
We must understand, first of all, that these things which come into creation, why do they happen? For instance, why do poets write a poem about the beauty of their beloved? It's a matter of how far you are on this path of love towards your beloved. So Taalay's love in this world, of course, his first love was God, but the worldly embodiment of that was Huzur Ayyat Allah bin. So inspiration, and if you try and do it yourself, you fall in love with Huzur, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Khamis, or fall in love with Khilafat, heads over heels, then you will also be guided to create such things. It's nothing something special. It happens out of love and how far you are on this path of love. So what he saw was a beloved person, and he saw that the light of his beloved is not carried to the people. Why don't they see him as I see him? And what he wanted to do and create was make his beloved revealed to the world through the eyes of the camera as he would see them. So this is an inspiration not for Taalay. This could be an inspiration for anyone who travels this path of love.
I'd like to go on and discuss about how Taalay Sahib conducted himself and went about his activities and daily tasks. And talk about how Taalay Sahib prioritized his activities, what he did differently from maybe other people do, and when he had to make a choice of what to be involved in and what not to be involved in, what was his decision-making process? You know, what was his ultimate focus and his choice? And maybe Ibrahim Sahib, if you would like to, you are a good friend and colleague of him. From your experience with Taalay Sahib and from meeting and talking to him, what was your experience of how he kind of how he lived his life in different aspects?
As a neighbor? If you can ask the question, as a friend. If you repeat the question, please, as a friend. Sorry.
So how did Taalay Sahib conduct himself?
Yeah.
He had to choose what he was involved in, what he didn't want to get involved in. How did he prioritize different things in his life?
Yeah. No, I think one of the great blessings we got, I think I and my family, is that Allah, through His Khalifa, Ayadahullah, gave us that opportunity to be the neighbors of Taalay. We were almost 3 years together, and Hazur somehow, by first, it's very strange phenomenon. First, Abd Khan Sahib, his uncle we were neighbors. Somehow, then we went to live somewhere else. Then suddenly, after short period of time, Hazur Ayadullah Ta'ala says he told us to go to Jamaat compound, and it so happened that me and Taalay were literally neighbors. We're living upstairs, and he was living ground floor. Now, there is a proverb in Arabic which says, رب أخ لك لم تلده أمك. There may be a brother of yours to whom your mother did not give birth. And Taalay Sahib was literally a brother. And I will tell you in which sense, what kind of personality. He was born in this society. And I think I heard now Syed Hashim Sahib, Amr Safir Sahib, Adil Sahib, all talking about Taalay. The point here is that when someone dies, when someone gets the rank of a shaheed, Quran says they are ahya, which means they are alive. Being alive means that they give life to others. That it's our duty to have that passion and that zeal like Taalay. And how? Taalay was a person born here in Europe, in England, like me, born in Europe. Sometimes you find those students, the youngsters born here, start to find the truth, to find the true Islam. What is Islam? How should we meet Allah? Some people start to focus too much on spirituality. We should be spiritual. Some people said we should become kind of Sufis. Taalay was, as we saw him, and I tell you, a neighbor, before I answer this, I tell you, as a neighbor, Muhammad ﷺ emphasized two very important aspects. One aspect is the real witness, the one who can bear testimony to the conduct, the behavior, and the morality of the husband is the wife. Same, the Holy Prophet ﷺ emphasized the rights of neighbors to such an extent that he thought that when Jibreel alayhi salam, came to him, he thought that the neighbor will inherit to that level. And he said the real Muslim is the one who gives the due rights to neighbors. And Taalay was such a person, I can tell you as a Muslim in literal sense of the word, that his life, as Muhammad said, prayer, sacrifice, life and death was for the sake of Allah. The embodiment of waqf. When we moved there, he fulfilled those rights. He will come to us and tell us what we need. I give you some examples. I'm extremely busy, have different commitments. He would come to me and say, Ibrahim, I know you have so many other commitments. Listen, Ibrahim, wherever you go, I will take care, of your children, bring them to school. What he will do, I will tell you. In the morning, because his son Talal was a small boy, I think 2 years old or 3 years old, something like this, he was not yet going to school. And Taalay, of course, 7 or 8 o'clock, he would after Fajr sleep, of course. But however, when we tell him, okay, my wife will tell him, okay, Ibrahim went somewhere, please, can you bring the children to school? Taalay, after Fajr, will not sleep. And he would tell us, I'm afraid. And when he will lie in bed, as he told us literally, he will look to the left, to the right, and was sleepless. We asked him why like this. He said, I'm worried, extremely worried, that I miss, that time, I was unable to, drop your children to school. What he will do, exactly at 8 or quarter to 8, he will go to his car, and sit there and waiting and then send a text message, okay, please bring your children. This was Taalay Sahib. Then Taalay Sahib, not only this, Taalay Sahib, I would give you some examples how he was. You heard, I think in Hazur's Friday sermon, Ayyadahullah, and some people that he was walking, for example, from Earlsfield to Bayt al-Futuh. One of the reasons, it's true, he was listening to Khalifatul Masih al-Rabi's Durus al-Quran, rahimahullah, and other things. But one of the reasons I want to tell you, and this is extremely important, especially for the Waqf Zindagis, for the missionaries and others, and office bearers in the Jama'at. Taalay was someone who never, it's strange, but in general, he never will ask for reimbursement. And he put himself in such a difficult situation. And that he was really at the edge, possibly possibly he will live in kind of poverty, but he will never, because Allah took care of him. Once, he parked, he said, Ibrahim, the driveway in front of the house. He said, can I park my car there for almost a month? I said, of course. Jannah, I'm not parking my car there. Okay, park your car. I said, why? Tell me. He said, I will tell you why. He said, because here we have to pay the parking permit, which is around £90. He said, I cannot afford it, nor will I ask Jamaat. I'm going to work for 1 month and save that money and pay for the parking permit. This was Taalay. And he was very content and had a very simple life. And I give you some examples of his spirituality. He would fast. I saw him myself. And he would read the Quran, do the tahajjud. As Hazur mentioned, he saw when Hazur instructed the missionaries, then he himself will immediately, he was a man of action, immediately implement Hazur's words. Moreover, he didn't want to be at the forefront to show himself in front of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih what he did. I heard from Syed Hashim Sahib, I think 2 weeks ago, and he was telling me about his family and his forefathers, and he was telling me, because this is what I saw, they were so aware of, they were so afraid and took every precaution not to associate anyone with Allah the Almighty. And that was, I can tell you, that was Taalay. Taalay Sahib, I tell you about him, rahimahullah. He would fast. Then in the morning, once he told me, Ibrahim, you stopped reading the Holy Quran because I was living up, there was a very thin layer. He could hear, he could hear me or I could hear him. He said, you are reciting always after Fajr the Holy Quran, but I don't hear you. Please, why did you stop? I said to him, no, because I came to know that my living room your bedroom is directly under my living room. You will hear everything, I will disturb you. I can't do that. That's why I read, in a very, in such a voice you can't hear me anymore. He said, no, Ibrahim, I'm reading the Quran. After that, please, when you read the Quran, I'm following you because you read the full chapter there. I like to listen. Please continue to do this. This was Taalay. Then Taalay, I can tell you something. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as well mentioned, he said the best of you is the one who's the best to his wife. And I can tell you, he always told us, whenever he came to our house, you see, I saw every small detail in treating his wife. He will focus on that and try to respect and dignify his wife to the highest level. And I can tell you, he was such a person. He was coming to our house, although we were very informal, we were brothers. He was almost every day we were together. However, that respect and dignity was always there. He told me once, you see, Ibrahim, now I want for this year, I think 2017, he said, I want to know the Holy Quran from Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Nas, to completely learn the Arabic language, to know the translation. That's my duty now. And he did not only start from the beginning to learn the Holy Quran, he wanted even to know the Arabic language. He wanted to understand the grammatical rules. He was coming to me and explained, Maulana Shir Ali radiallahu anhu explained it in this way, but I think the translation should be like this, but the grammatical rule is, why is it here like this and there? And I can tell again, he was so humble that no one was aware of it. Moreover, when we had some books from Tasnif, I can tell you, Hazur tells us to translate those books, and for proofreading, he will come and he will go through it completely. He loved that work. And his English was I can't think, magnificent, excellent, to that level, but same time he was extremely humble. I tell you about his humility. Rashid, who's one of the people working in the Tabshir office, told me when he became Waqf, when Hazur appointed him as Waqf, he went to Tabshir to work for some weeks. He said, when we wrote our letters in English language, he will check, we will give it to him to check. He said, whenever he will find any mistake, it will take such a pain for him and difficulty, and with extremely careful and coming and tell, I think it should be like this, it should be like this, not to point, not to embarrass someone in front of him, not to hurt his feelings. Moreover, I tell you even this, and I think this is very important. Once, I think Hazur Ayadahullah Ta'ala, as he tells, are you children sometimes in the holidays, in the evenings, are they running, where is Taalay hearing that may be disturbing, such a love. Every time when I met Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih, Ayadullah, Hazur will ask me as well about the neighbors, and Basir Khan, Taalay Sahib. Hazur told me maybe they're running, you hear each other, do you hear them? And I said, Hazur, no, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, we don't hear him, nor do they hear us. But once it so happened in holidays, my two sons, Talha and Muhammad, they were running a lot, you see? And we said, stop it now. Taalay, is sleeping, it's late, it's around 11 o'clock, something like this. However, then we heard Talal, the small son, and Talal was running, you see? By joke, we sent a text message to Taalay Sahib, and we told him, we were thinking, we are admonishing our children to be silent, you see, and now your son is running. He said, oh, I can't, you see, it's difficult, you see. Can I do something? I said, yes, okay. He said, can I bring him to your house? Let him play with your children. And they played around midnight, and they, I think were exhausted, you see. And we had such a love and such a respect, and I can tell you, and dignity. Some people misunderstood him. And sometimes I thought, and I told this to Munir Ode Sahib, because he's a Syed, and as well from Masih Ma'ud alayhi salatu wasalam family, possibly he has also that Arab element of being very strong and Jalali in him. And that is why he was you had to convince him. If you convince him, he was such a person. I'm telling you, for an example, by Allah's grace, whenever he produced any documentary, or before finishing it, the script, somehow, so humble, he would come to us, me and my wife, and tell, can you go through it and give your comments and feedback? However, he was such a person. I think this is for every khadim and tifl. It's extremely important. If you do not convince him, tell him. If you don't convince him, he will not follow, of course, that comment. If you convince him and he knows and he understands that it should be something different, he will accept it wholeheartedly. And he didn't have any stubbornness or anything in his heart. His heart was clear and pure. And one thing I want to mention, and that's, I think, about Tabligh. Hazur mentioned that he was a Tablighi man, and he loved to spread the message of Islam. I don't know whether Khuddam are aware of it or not. He would come, I will tell you something, he will come to my house and go through complete Tabligh plan, the national annual plan of the UK Jamaat, to every point. I remember some things. He was always telling me, Hazur choose you as an Arab. And I think the English people and the Europeans and the Asians, they will listen more to you as you are the people of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he said, Ibrahim, I helped you so much in Tabligh. I said, how? He created a website which is called Wiki Ahmadiyya. I don't know whether people are aware of it. There is a website which is called Wiki Ahmadiyya with all the allegations against Masih Maud, and he compiled them. You can check it. And then he said, as people are not using it, don't go, Ibrahim, I give this to you, this website. Please utilize it for Tabligh or take anything from it. And recently I didn't hear anyone speaking about it. There's a website which is called Wiki Ahmadiyya with all the allegations and the answers that was done by Taalay, just voluntarily himself under Abid Khan Sahib, and he loved to do this job. Another thing I want to tell you, when I was in the hospital, I was at the brink of death. Then he told me, and I mentioned this, you could hear this in the documentary, he said, Ibrahim, I made that pledge to Allah that if something happens to you, that I made it, then I myself will take care of your family till my last breath. One very important thing, was Taalay now aware or not, about his future? I tell you something about this. And my wife, one thing I tell you, she was always telling me, this person Taalay, he has a bright future. I don't know where Allah, which level, where he will reach. And she mentioned this as well to the respected wife of Syed, Hashim Sahib. He told me, Ibrahim, when you're in the hospital, can you tell me you saw a certain vision, or Allah blessed you with Allah's sight or conversation? Which day was this? And I told Taalay Sahib, I checked and checked, I said it was this day. Then he told me, on that day, Ibrahim, I'm a little bit shocked about something. I told him, why? Tell me. He said, you have to promise me not to mention this to anyone. And he said, to no one. I said, okay, because he gave that firm pledge, you see it, not to mention it. And I said, I will take it complete out of my heart. Allah made it so that I completely forgot. But the gist was this I remember. He told me a story. And that when it seems that I survived there. But when he told me the story, and it was very clear that his death is near, and that he'll be shaheed. But I was terrified and understood the meaning of that dream. And I said to Taalay Sahib, khair, it will be okay, inshallah. Okay? Just, give sadaqah. I came home. I told my wife, I saw this. I said, can I? Because I give him. I said, let me then give me the chance only to mention it to my wife. He gave me that permission. I mentioned to her. And then we paid some sadaqah. And 4th of August 2020, my wife saw a dream, and she saw Taalay Sahib, and Taalay Sahib said, rahimahullah, he said, I am making a documentary for MTA about cloning and in defense of the honor of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then in that dream or vision, he says, do you have any reference? She says, I have one reference from the Holy Quran. However, Ibrahim has many references from the hadith or ahadith. That was the dream. My wife told me about this dream, and she was so, she was so determined and resolute. This is from Allah the Almighty. I told her, Adghat al-Ahlam. I said, you see, I don't believe, in this kind of dreams. I was very serious. Then somehow, this took, and she saw this last year in Muharram, August 2020. This is last year, August 2020, exactly 1 year beforehand, even the date. 1 year later, someone sent me from family of Hashim Sahib, something from Tadhkira, and it was written, Ghulam Qadir Shaheed, came back and he enlightened, in my own words, the house. Then the revelation to Masih Maud was رَدَّ اللَّهُ رَدَّهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. Allah sent him back to me. Something like this. But then it came to my mind exactly because it says that the dream that Ibrahim has many references. It means at the right time, the interpretation came because Allah sent Ghulam Qadir Shaheed back. That means someone, of course, like Ghulam Qadir, will have this kind of shahada. But the dream speaks about cloning. And cloning means a replica. Someone exactly like Ghulam Qadir. And this is what happened. He made an entire documentary. It was in defense, in reality, of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because that's focused on Khilafat. And it was exactly the replica what happened to his father-in-law, rahimahullah, and this happened to Taalay. Moreover, Taalay told us once, please, in my family, we have this problem of having Masih Maud's family diabetes. Please pray for us. He told this to us. Then somehow, my wife told me in her heart, she got that impression from Allah the Almighty, Inni ma'aka wa ma'a ahlik. I'm with you and with your family. And then we wrote this to him. We had the group, special group, Taalay Sahib as a neighbor, myself, and the family, and we're talking with each other. He wrote to me, and he was laughing. He said, you know why I told you this? Because there is as well a prophecy that some young people among Masih Maud's family some people among Masih Maud's family will die at a very young age. And then he put the icon sign laughing, as if, this will be applicable to him. Shortly, what I want to say about Taalay Sahib, he was very passionate. I think respected Amr Safir Sahib mentioned this. We would go together, and one thing he was accessible. And I mean accessible, and this I want to mention especially to the office bearers. Many office bearers are not accessible, or some of them are not accessible. I tell you about him. If you call him, he will always call you back the same day if it's late. Whatever we send to him, whatever you will tell him, he will finish that job. He did not have the 10-6 mentality or the 9-5 mentality. For him, waqf was 24 hours. This I want to tell you, especially about his accessibility. You could access him any time. Moreover, he opened his house. And I want to say this to every khadim and tifl. He fulfilled the rights of a neighbor. When he had Atfal program, I remember he will bring them to his house. He will bring them to his house and show his own, train them in his own way. And I tell you, when you look to the missionaries in the past and the Waqf Zindagis in the past, the office bears in the past, wherever you go, they will open the house and invite the people, the Waqf Zindagis, the office bears, whoever. He was someone who opened his house exactly, and that is in the family as well. And I think he conquered the hearts of many people through this. And there is so much I want to tell you about Taalay Sahib. It's an open book. Whatever I said, this is what we witnessed. And Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned on the Day of Judgment, there were certain people, some groups or categories. He said, one of them is a neighbor. If the other neighbor bears testimony to his right behavior, his morality and righteousness, then Allah will say, on the Day of Judgment, that neighbor, I will let him enter paradise. Not only this, even those weaknesses possibly the neighbor was not aware of, even that Allah will say, I will forgive. And shortly, there's so much to say about Taalay Sahib. And Taalay Sahib, this what we said, what has been discussed, should be he should be a model for others in such a way that Khuddam and Atfal follow his way, and especially those who are born in this society. Jazakallah.
I think we're all so many inspiring stories. The way that he took on board, Taalay Sahib took on board the words of the Khalifa, even when they were not directed at him. he felt that because of his being part of the promised Messiah's family, being a waqf, he took on things in his role and said that I have to do it, is the words of the Khalifa. It was his dedication and compassion for Khilafat. And even the way he treated others, I think it's so amazing to see that one person had all of these characteristics. I think Syed Hashim Sahib wanted to just mention something.
Jazakallah, you had a back towards that, but on that corner there was a young man who wanted to ask a question. He kept his right. Okay. On some lighter notes, I'm just going to share some facts with you. First of all, Taalay was born in Lahore, Pakistan, and when he was few months old, we moved to Abu Dhabi. We lived there, and when he was 5 years old, just over 5 years old, we came over here. So he was born not in this country, but in Pakistan. But what I'm going to share with you are some light-hearted facts about it. For instance, as I've mentioned about myself, you know, I'm still a worldly person, and I was more involved at that time. So perhaps you are not aware of it. There used to be a festival called Basant. It's a Hindu festival, and it takes place at the time when it says Basant Pala Urant, meaning by when the winter is leaving and the spring is starting. So Hindus celebrate this, they call it Basant. And whosoever born on Basant is known as Basanti, that he'll be very lively. So how it happened was that on Basant, what is also done, which is not done in Pakistan anymore because of restrictions, but you fly kites and you fight kites and you think like that. I was into that. And my record of fighting kites was terrible. I used to fly kites, but I always lost and had, in fighting, lost the kite flight. So Taalay was, it was 8th of February, and next day, 9th of February, was Basant. And I said to his mother, okay, please, any other day, but not tomorrow, because I've made all the preparation for Basant and, all the kite flying and stuff like that. And it was in the middle of the night, wife says that, I'm having pains, I think we have to go to the hospital. I said, no, it's not, just go to sleep. It's nothing. And, but, afterwards it got serious, so I told my mother, we're living with the mother, so we went. And he was born in Lahore in a hospital called Umar Hospital. So name of the hospital was Umar Hospital. So, what I'm going to tell you, it's mind-boggling. When he passed away, the person who was with him, on whom lap he lay his head, his name was Umar as well. So, some people get, amusement from things like this. But what I want to tell you that on that, when he was born and everything was settled, I said to ask permission from his mother. I said, can I go and fly my kites now? And she permitted me. And that was the last Basant I ever celebrated. God never gave me a chance to celebrate it again. I say that things change after Taalay. But on that day, I still remember my count. I cut 14 kites, which I'd never done in my life before. So just in few hours that I got, I cut 14 kites. But Ikhlaf Saab was mentioning something about similarities between his father-in-law, my cousin Mirza Ghulam Qadir, and Taalay. And I'll give you some similarities. These things are sometimes interest. They're not of any importance, but they're sometimes of interest to people. For instance, Taalay has been mentioned by Safir Sahib and many others that he did not have any inclination towards world. Having said that, if Taalay had gone towards worldly side, he could have been the most successful worldly person in the world. In fact, it was mentioned to me the other day by one of his very closest friends, and he said he asked Taalay, have you ever not decided, sometimes the world is also very attractive. Have you never in your life thought about earning world? And he said, to be fair with you, I gave it a thought. And you know something, that if I had gone that way, I would have been the most successful and more richest person in the world. But what I have now is compared nothing. What I have now, compared to that, it would have been nothing. And I'm glad that I decided to keep my religion, my faith before the world. So this similarity, if you keep in mind that Mirza Ghulam Qadir was a very, very successful academic. He achieved the highest standards. He got position in Pakistan in the whole after FSC. And he got a position when he passed out from the engineering university. Then he went to America to do his master's. And he lived in very circumstances which were very trying financially. And he was married as well. And as soon as he finished his master's, and he was about to finish, he was being offered jobs, which was at that time, in 1980s, were more than $100,000 a year. And his wife, because they had seen so much hardship, said to him, no, why not just work a couple of more years, get some financially comfortably and then go back. He said, no, I have devoted my life and I'll need to go back to Jamaat. So he straight away left everything, all those offers on the table, and came back to Rabwa. Now, the other similarities. Qadir Sahib were 5 brothers and sisters. Taalay were 5 brothers and sisters. But now what I'm going to tell you, that everything turns opposite. Qadir were 2 brothers and 3 sisters. Taalay were 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Then Qadir went on to marry a girl who was orphaned at a very young age of 9 years old. Taalay went to marry a girl who was orphaned at a very young age of 9 years old. Taalay married a girl who were 4 brothers and sisters. Taalay married the girl who was 4 brothers and sister. Qadir married a girl who were 4 brothers and sister. But then the opposite bit. Qadir married the girl who were 3 sisters and a brother. And Taalay married a girl who were 1 sister and 3 brothers. And such similarities can go on and on in other affairs as well. For instance, I'm forgetting about this. Well, it'll come to me, it's gone now. The other thing I wanted to mention, that Taalay loved listening to stories. And he wanted religious stories and stories which would inspire him. And as Hazur mentioned, that he just did not listen to those stories or search about history just to get some interest after that, but he wanted to make them a part of it. So every story that he heard, he made a part of it. Now I'm going to ask you a question after this, because I narrated one story to him, and that story has a bit of complexity to it. And when I narrated him to him, he was only 15 years old, but he was immediately able to understand what it is. So I'm going to ask you if anyone of you understand. But in that lineage that you say, that one lineage is missing, that Taalay's mother's, Taalay's grandmother from his mother's side, Apa Sajda,
Test one.
her father was Abdul Mughni Sahab. Now, Abdul Mughni Sahab was himself a very, very learned person, so much so that in early 1900s, when he appeared in his BSc exams, he was promised a very high career. His father wanted to be a civil servant. His university wanted to be a professor of chemistry, etc. So he had 3 offers. He came to Qadian before he could receive the result, and when he was in Qadian, he received those 3 results. He received his result and got those 3 offers, immediate offers. And it was a great thing during those days, in the days of British Empire to get those kind of offers. So he went to Hazrat Khalifa Masih Sani. It was early 1900, and he said to Huzur, Huzur, I've got these 3 offers. And Huzur said, yes, okay, select one of them which is most appropriate to you, you think you. So he said, Huzur, I've brought them to you because I came to Qadian that I will live all my life by Qadian. And even if I have to be a cobbler, now he was such a academically, and say, even if I have to be a cobbler and do the shoes of the people who live in Qadian, I would rather live in Qadian. So Huzur accepted his waqf at that and said, okay, go and teach in Talimul Islam College. So this Abdul Mughni Sahab, I'll just tell him one incident that he was Afsar Jalsa Aslana in 1950s. And in those days, it was not like this. You had to go on cycle everywhere. There were no mobile phones. So for communication, you had to get in touch with the person, etc., etc. So think about those difficulties. And he was type of person who never missed tahajjud in his life. So he was Afsar Jalsa Salana, and once what happened that he got very tired, and it was 12 o'clock in the night, and he came back and parked his cycle and sat on the bed, and he was so tired he went to sleep immediately without saying his tahajjud. And at that, look at the connection with God. He heard, and it was a heard, not a great voice, but a word which was a whisper, just not to disturb him. And it was God whispering in his ear. And he said, Abdul Mughni, फरिश्ते बातें कर रहे हैं कि अब्दुल मुगनी आज बहुत थका हुआ है, शायद तहज्जुद ना पढ़ सके. Meaning by it says that Abdul Mughni, the angels are discussing that Abdul Mughni is very tired today. Tonight he is very tired. He might not be able to offer tahajjud. So what a way of God that people who have relationship with him, that in such a loving way, God makes them attend to their duty. So he got up and attended to his tahajjud prayer. So Abdul Mughni, now this is a question I'm going to ask you now. So listen carefully, very carefully to this incident. Abdul Mughni Sahab says that Hazrat Khalifa Masih Sani sent me, that is Abdul Mughni Sahab, with Maulvi Sher Ali Sahab, and Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmed Sahab, Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu. So 3 of them were sent out on a job for Jamaat, and when they came back at night, they got off board of the train at Qadian station. And he said it was quite late at night, and of course there were no lights in those days, and that there was no moon, so it was complete dark, and top of that there was andi. Andi means this wind with dust which goes in Pakistan and Indian countries. So much so that we could not see the hand in front of our eyes. And now we had to make this way back to our homes. And we had to walk this treaded path which was kacha and which had digs up and stuff like that. So we were concerned because we can't see. We might fall and break our legs or something like that. So what they said, okay, we will go hand in hand. So they made a chain of their hands so that we walk together, 3 of them in a row. So if one of us fall, the other one can hold him. And as they started doing so, a person came with a lantern and walked in front of them. So when this person started walking in front of them with the lantern, they could see the path and they walked very comfortably. So as it was, first on the right came the house of Maulvi Sher Ali Sahab when you're walking from there. So Maulvi Sher Ali Sahab turned towards his eyes, and this person who was carrying the lantern started walking in front of him. To this, Maulvi Sher Ali Sahab said that, look, I know the path of my house, I know all the toyas and tibbas and things like that, so you please go with these 2 gentlemen. They have to go further away, and I'm concerned about them. I'll go to my house. That person did not say anything but kept walking in front of him. And then, so it was that he left him at his door and kept standing with the letter on the door. And then Maulvi Sher Sahib. But when he met, Maulvi Sher Sahib met at the Fajr prayer tomorrow morning, next morning, he met Abdul Mughni Sahib. And he said, I'm sorry, you had to walk in the dark, that person, although I had kept saying to him, but he would not go. Abdul Mughni Sahib said, that is strange. He kept walking with us. And when I turned towards my home, he walked with me, and I said exactly the same, said that go and attend to Mia Sahib. I know the path of Baba, but he left me at my door. And they were both perplexed, what's happening over here? And said, it looks like that Mia Sahib had to walk without a lantern. So they both of them at the Fajr time went to Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmed Sahib and said, we are very sorry that you had to walk this way. He said, what you're saying, that person came with me right up to Darul Masih and left me at my gate. Now I ask you a question, can anyone explain what happened? And it is, quite perplexing. And I've asked it many people whom I narrated this, and they've said, now Taalay was only 15 years old when I mentioned this to him. And immediately said, it's very clear. There were 3 angels with the lantern, and only one angel appeared and there were 3 angels, and these 3 people can only see their own angel. Do you understand it now? So there were 3 angels, of course, for all 3 of them, but they can only see their own angel with the lantern. So Taalay was only 15, and immediately, even I did not understand it. But he immediately could understand something. So God had given him lots of intelligence. I'm sorry it's taken so much time.
No, Jazakallah. I think that's it's a unique story. I'm sure a lot of people will carry that and share it with their families as well. How many people here are age 15? Just put your hands up. Any 15-year-olds? Did you understand that story? Okay, guys, I know we're running a little bit close to time. I want to thank all the guests for joining us. I saw a few hands up, but there's another session starting in literally 8 minutes in the main marquee, and everyone is requested to go and join there. Mian Waqas Sahib is going to be doing a presentation, and there's a discussion with him. So we need to wrap up fairly quickly, I'm afraid. It's been really awe-inspiring conversations and accounts that have been shared with us. And I'm sure all of you are very motivated and highly warmed up and inspired at the moment. So I'd like to... Yeah, if anybody wants to speak to the panelists directly, I think they're here for a few minutes, so you can come and speak to them directly and ask any questions you have. Otherwise, I'd like to just thank all the guests. Jazakallah so much for coming today, sharing your stories, inspiring our young and old Khuddam with the life of Taalay Sahib. He is an inspiration for all of us. And may his memory and his accounts all continue to inspire everyone, all the Khuddam across the country and throughout the world, inshallah. Thank you for sharing and thank you for your time as well.
Sorry, the one I forgot was Abdul Qadir Shaheed Sahib was martyred on 14th of April, and Taalay was martyred on 14th of Muharram. So the dates are similar as well. But once again, different calendar.
Yeah.
Opposite calendar.
Jazakallah. Jazakallah. Jazakallah.